Hey everybody, welcome back to the 6th Round Post-Fight Show with me, Zane Simon. I am going solo this week. Eddie has abandoned me once again. I think he actually just went out to watch the goddamn card somewhere, which feels like an extra slap in the face. I mean, come on, man. But I'm coming to y'all just from the conclusion of UFC 318 at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, Louisiana, where Max Holloway just preserved, kept, defended his BMF title, his fake belt that they use to sell pay-per-views for cards where they don't have title fights, but a fantastic trilogy fight against Dustin Poirier. And every bit, I think, every bit the fight I hoped it would be. I think every bit the fight everybody hoped it would be, excepting that if you had really hoped Dustin would end his career on a win, then obviously it wasn't that. But it was a great back and forth fight. Max got hurt badly in the second round. Dustin got hurt badly in the first. Both men recovered and battled it out for all the rest of the fight. Back and forth action every round. Holloway, the big thing that was different in this and had me picking him going in outside of just it's a retirement fight and you should never pick a fighter going into their retirement fight. It's always a fraught proposition, but the big thing that had me picking Max here going in and that really showed up outside of his size was his improved kicking game. And then we talked about on the video, I got to give Connor credit for this being his point, but Holloway's improved back foot game, his improved retreating game, and a lot of what we saw in this fight that worked really well for Holloway was his ability to stop Poirier's pressure with kicks and his ability to circle out and counter better when Poirier would blitz forward. And those were the moments when, in the first fight, Holloway would flurry, or in the second fight, rather, the first fight, Holloway got submitted, but in the second fight, we saw often, Holloway would step in, flurry, gain some momentum, do really well, put some shots together, and he would eat one big shot from Poirier that would back him off. And then Poirier would flurry forward on him, and Holloway couldn't really control Poirier's momentum when that momentum would shift like that. In this fight, what we saw a lot better was Holloway's ability to stop that momentum, whether it was through his circling out and countering, or whether it was kicking Poirier to the legs, to the body, doing things that made Poirier have to himself step back and consider Max's offense on the back foot so that Poirier could not just start taking over and running away with the momentum of the fight. Now, when Holloway got caught in round 2, that really shifted his own willingness to step in and push forward. Poirier's always been a really tremendous counter puncher. It's always been the core function of his game. The thing that he does best is his ability to pivot and counter. And Holloway got caught a couple times in the second round, started to get hit really hard, and it really put a damper on his own willingness to push forward and lead and create the momentum that had started the fight so well for him. That created some room for Poirier. It looked like Poirier was going to be able to maybe claw his way back into this fight. But, I think we got a question here, too, from somebody, Ian, outside the main event and D-Rod Holland fight. If you missed this card, did you not miss much? And I would say, I don't think this card had any bad fights on it. There was nothing on this card that I really didn't enjoy. But after a flurry of awesome finishes early, the card did start to lack really standout elite technical performances, really standout displays of dominant technique, of dominant fight IQ, of really excellent high-level MMA. Even the Rodriguez Holland fight, which was awesome, felt like two guys kind of throwing fight IQ out the window and just going to war with each other. So the Holloway Poirier fight was really like, this was a supreme moment in this card where we really got to watch some amazing high level MMA in that main event. And two guys still at the peak of their competitive drive, even maybe a hair off the peak of their abilities, but at the peak of their drive to compete at an elite level and able to adjust from round to round to find new avenues for success. For Poirier, I think he was able to step in and punish those kicks for Holloway. And for Holloway, he was able to, after kind of drawing back and focusing mostly just on footwork and countering, he was able to find the points where Poirier was stepping in and to counter with flurries and to start building momentum on Poirier again to create the kind of energy he needed to reintegrate his kicking game late in the fight. And it's a great thing about a 5-round fight. You get to actually have a fight that tells a story, and this felt like a really awesome story. It's a little sad for Poirier at the very end there that Holloway did the whole like point to the center thing, and it almost looked like, I don't know, like Poirier was like a little confused, like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like salute each other and hang out for a minute here at the end. But Holloway, pointed, and they were gonna stand on a napkin and do their the brawl thing, and that was all Holloway. Like, if you were split on how to score that 5th round, and it felt like a close round, Holloway really put his stamp on it in the last 10 seconds by absolutely owning that exchange, clipping Poirier up, having Poirier stumbling forward into the clinch and all that. And, for people who might have thought, oh, this is a 48-48 fight, we saw, or a 38-38 fight through 4 rounds. We certainly saw one judge had it that way. Then that last round sealed the victory for Holloway. I actually did not notice this, that they were counting to each other how many punches they were landing in exchanges. I saw them each like doing the one and, oh, you got me, and that kind of stuff. But the actual counting was that it was, I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah, okay. I saw the one. I didn't see the threes and all that. But I mean, this is one of those things where I think I scored at 49-46 Holloway, but I don't really think that sells exactly how the fight was. I think Holloway did enough to win most of the rounds of the fight, but it was an incredibly competitive, fun fight throughout. Poirier still felt like, punch for punch, he had more power than Holloway, and he was landing with more pop, but he couldn't match Holloway's work rate. And in that work rate and a bigger, stronger Max Holloway was still able to land a lot of shots that got to Poirier and clearly would stun him or buzz him for a second. One of the things I loved seeing in this that I really picked up on in the fight that was a regular thing for Holloway, and I loved seeing, because it's one of those things that we don't see punished often enough in MMA, is that every time Poirier would bring his feet together, Max would hit him with a hard right hand. And if he brought his feet together immediately after getting hit with the hard right hand, he did him with another hard right hand. It's great to see Holloway just real veteran, craft in those kinds of moments. So I'm gushing about this, but Well, okay, we got somebody asking if I think Ilya sleeps Max again. And I hate having to think about that question in this moment because it was such a cool fight and they're fun guys, they're great guys. But I mean, yeah, if I even the very best versions of Holloway and Poirier, I think would always struggle with Topuria and the level of clean technical power puncher that he is in the pocket. And I mean, I think that there's great fights for Holloway. Let me see if I'm looking at the rankings here. I'm just feeling like I'm saying this off the top of my head. We do need to do at some point. I mean, I know he just lost by clean KO, but I do feel like at some point we got to do Holloway versus Oliveira, and I do feel like you got to do Holloway versus Hooker, and I mean, I'd have a lot of fun with something like Holloway versus Pimblett too. Now, would Holloway versus Sarukian and Holloway versus Makhachev or Holloway versus Gamrot all be potentially interesting fights as well? Sure, I would start to worry more about their wrestling games and the size and things like that playing more of a factor. Do not need to see Max Holloway versus Mike Chandler. I don't think Chandler is really in that position. I think Chandler would make more sense for somebody like Moicano right now, but Holloway, I mean, I think the fights that immediately spring to mind for me are Holloway versus Oliveira and Holloway versus Hooker. Those are the fights that I would really want to see right now and I think would be a lot of fun. And yeah, maybe if he wins those, you do Holloway versus Topuria too. I don't think it goes a lot different, but Holloway certainly has earned enough credit over his career to run that fight back and get another chance to put that fight together again. Otherwise, you know, for Poirier, I gotta say too, when they were actually announcing this is the last fight of Poirier's career, I couldn't help thinking that we're not seeing the last time Dustin Poirier fights. And I know he said that he's done. I know he said he's not coming back. I know it sounds like his wife really doesn't want him to fight. And I know he's been talking about needing to walk away for years now. And I'm sure he's got a lot of pressure for it. I just can't help feeling like the amount of warmth and the genuine, like, wonderful reception he got, the fact that he's still not even 40 yet, he's only 36, which for most prize fighters is still, like, it's when they start falling off. He would be smart to retire now and walk away. I just can't help feeling that a couple of years from now, he's going to be back. And it'll be just the right fight. It'll be just the right moment. It'll be a huge deal. It'll be a huge pay-per-view. But yeah, I feel like I can't have watched this and feel like we saw Dustin Poirier for the last time. So I don't know. That's just my feeling. People talking about Poirier fighting McGregor again. I mean, we can't really be talking about Conor McGregor actually fighting again. I don't think that Conor McGregor is ever actually fighting again. Maybe this whole White House card idea draws him back in, but I can't imagine that Conor McGregor will ever actually step foot in a fight. He doesn't need the money, and he doesn't want to be humiliated. He wants the representation of being a fighter, so he's never going to stop training. He's never going to actually walk away, but he's never going to actually fight either. And somebody said Dustin and karate, he's not going to leave the UFC. The UFC's never going to. Dustin Poirier is one of the few actual draws that the UFC has, and that draw power for the next 5 years or so is probably only going to grow. Even if he doesn't fight, fighters in his position at his point in his career, this is when drawing power tends to actually increase surprisingly. And it's, it's only really when a fighter starts getting beat badly as they're aging in their career that goes away. I think right now he's going to be, he's not, the UFC's never going to let him walk away for something else. The idea of making him an ambassador like Chuck Liddell, I mean, the problem there is that Dana White actually loved Chuck Liddell. He doesn't love Dustin Poirier. That's not going to happen. And TKO, Ari Emanuel cut that off the moment he stepped in the door, too. He kicked Chuck Liddell off the Dana White's couch and called it done. So somebody saying, if he's not fighting, how is he drawing anything? Fighters at this point in their career, it's like saying Conor McGregor isn't fighting and how is he going to draw? Like, if Conor McGregor came back, it would be the hugest draw that you can imagine. For, years, for fighters way late in their careers, if they're just, it's like Mike Tyson still drew a huge crowd. If you have a certain amount of reputation, and especially if you're not fighting and you're not really ruining your legacy or ruining that reputation, drawing power doesn't tend to just vanish like that. Fans remember, and they especially tend to remember fighters that they really love and feel like were great draws in their prime. You really kind of have to go on Anderson Silva levels or, Tito Ortiz levels of skids or things like that, where you really have to kind of construct your obscurity for that to diminish. Anyway. So yeah, this was a great fight to cap off the event. This was an event I went into feeling like it was an okay card as a pay-per-view. It was fine. It's not great. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. It was just fine. And I walked out feeling like this is what a not super well booked but fine booked pay-per-view. This is about as well as you can go, which is a lot of the other fights in the main card were good and fun but not important, but the main event showed up huge and people aren't going to walk away from this feeling like they were disappointed. So yeah. Also, people asking about the WWE or boxing. I don't know. I just don't see it. I think if Dustin Poirier comes back to do anything, it will be it'll be back with the UFC, and it'll be a big pay-per-view, and it'll be, something like a Conor McGregor legacy fight, although I doubt that happens. Or it'll be some kind of, I don't know, another Max Holloway fight or some other kind of, another Justin Gaethje fight or something like that, where it just makes, for him, it's something personally he wants, and the itch is still there and hasn't gone away, and he's still young enough to do it. Or something like when, GSP came back and fought Bisping after years away. Anyway. That brings us to a co-main event. Paulo Costa, Roman Kopylov. And yeah, this was a better fight than I thought it would be. It didn't really feel like a co-main event, but it was a great reminder that when Paulo Costa is confident and when he wants to fight and feels like fighting, he's still very much an elite fighter in his prime. He's still just out here at 34 years old as an elite athletic specimen who, maybe is benefiting greatly from the UFC's new, entirely behind closed doors drug testing program. And he came out for the first time in years, and he fought on the front foot in a fight, he had to fight on the front foot. Roman Kopylov is an absolute buzzsaw when he's going forward, and he is terrible and has terrible defense going backwards. And Costa went out and he pushed Kopylov backward. He asserted himself. He set the pace, and Kopylov didn't really have a game to combat that. I mean, it's the kind of thing that is going to keep Kopylov regularly out of the elite of the middleweight division, that he is an entirely unidirectional fighter. And every time Costa could push forward on him, Kopylov just looked overwhelmed. And so, yeah, I mean, this is exactly what Costa needed. He's still got that fight he wants with Khamzat Chimaev out there. And it's not a fight that really makes any sense off a win over somebody like Kopylov, but it is also a fight that the UFC would love to make. And if Chimaev beats Duplessis, I could easily see them finding an excuse to try to get Paulo Costa back in there. More likely, in the meantime, you know, he'll need to probably the right. They could do Paulo Izzy too. I actually do think that wouldn't be a bad idea, but I also don't know that either man would like that. Just because for Izzy, it's a fight he already won that Costa didn't really show up for at all. And for Costa, it felt like the stress of that fight got to him so badly that he basically sabotaged himself. So is he going to want to put himself through that again? I don't know. I think that your probably most likely options are something like RoboCop is a good option, or we've got Cannonier fighting Michael Page coming up. You could do the winner of Costa versus the winner of that fight. Although I believe he has already fought Cannonier, didn't he? No, he didn't. Okay. So yeah, the winner of Cannonier versus Page, I think that would be a really obvious option, especially if Page wins it. Then Page versus Costa is a fight that's really easy to sell. And then, yeah, you've got Bahayo versus Imavov out there, although Imavov is in top contender range. So, he's fighting Bahayo, so who knows what could fall out of that. My guess is Costa probably has to win one more fight to really assert himself. So something like Rodriguez or the Page Cannonier winner would make the most sense. But this was a huge win for him. Really badly needed to assert a fighter that has the potential to be a continued draw for the UFC back into the elite as somebody they can put in big fights where he can at least be a credible B-side, because that was what was kind of missing from Costa for the past little while, is that his own seeming disinterest in MMA really took the win. Like I said, it didn't even feel like he should be a co-main event in this pay-per-view. And this win, he went out and he reacquitted himself as a top-tier fighter that the UFC should be putting back in top spots. And yeah, so that's a great win for him. For Kopylov, I mean, this is a hard knockback that really showed his game is not at the level to compete where he needs to. I mean, I hate lining guys up from the same event. It's never something I like doing, but a fight with Marvin Vettori would make a lot of sense right now. Also, otherwise, somebody like Jack Hermanson coming off that Rodriguez loss, or Kelvin Gastelum, those would all make sense for Kopylov. Brendan Allen too. Yeah, he came off of. Well, he got a win here. I think Allen's probably going to be lined up for a fighter himself coming off a win, but yeah, something like that. All right. On that note, Daniel Rodriguez, Kevin Holland, and this was a wild fight. I mean, for like the first half of this fight, it felt like Rodriguez was fighting as a kind of diminished talent. I mean, I ain't actually. Let me see. Where are my stats here? Like, it felt like Holland really came out and started hot. And he was looking like he was a big class above Rodriguez here. And that was kind of what I expected on paper. And it felt like Rodriguez, God, Brazil has really just screwed up Mars for me forever. But Rodriguez, feels like he's been a little flat lately, even with that win over Ponzinibbio in his last fight out. He has not been pushing the pace. He's not been the brawler he used to be. And Holland was coming out and just putting it on him. And then it just kind of also felt like Holland's habit of taking fights that he has clearly not really prepared for that heavily bit him in the ass, and he started getting caught, and Rodriguez started getting his timing, and this fight just flipped entirely on its head. I can't believe it was scored 29-28 at all. It felt like this should be 29-27 D-Rod. He dropped Holland twice in round 2, outlanded him 31-12 in power strikes. Like, that's a 10-8 round. It's just a 10-8 round. That's it. To give that a 10-9, and then, like, for Holland to come back in round 3, that was amazing. But it just, like, I could see trading 10-8s, but I can't see just 10-9s back and forth across the board. And to score it like, I don't know. I mean, the judging was not bad this event at all. Judges didn't get any cards wrong in terms of who was the winner and what fights were close and what fights weren't and all that. But it is crazy to me that was a 29-28 across the board. I felt like Rodriguez really deserved a 10-8 in there. And honestly, for Rodriguez at this point, like the booth mentioned it, that this would be kind of a big career moment for him as he's getting older and sliding towards 40. And it has to be said that for Rodriguez to be, I don't even know if he's potentially winding down his career, but for him to be winding down his career with wins over Ponzinibbio and Kevin Holland as a guy who entered the UFC seemingly as a kind of surprising, late career journeyman action fighter who could go out and put together some fun fights in the UFC, but maybe not ever be any kind of top performer. It is really remarkable how well Rodriguez's late career has gone in the UFC and how well he's accounted for himself in these fights. And this was a really remarkable, especially how gassed he got in this fight and his ability to come back. I mean, he and Holland both just kind of threw all their fight IQ as two incredibly seasoned veterans. They fought this fight with all the worst sacrifice takedowns, all of the worst jumping into guard when you've got your guy hurt and you should be standing him back up. Or, Holland hit Rodriguez so hard that Rodriguez fell over nearly unconscious into the fence, and Holland stepped in and clinched him up and held him upright until Rodriguez's brain woke up well enough to basically get his feet under him again. And yeah, so people are talking about this should be on the MMA Depressed Us. And yeah, it's an all-time great, good, bad fight. Just a complete slobber knocker between two vets who feel like they should have a lot more technical fighting under their belt at this point in their career. But it was a hell of a lot of fun, and in a big run of fights without a finish, it was a huge highlight as just a really fun action fight. Rodriguez, after that win, was Holland actually ranked? Yeah, Holland was ranked. So, yeah, I would like to see, you could do D-Rod versus Gilbert Burns. That'd be a lot of fun. That's the fight to make off of that. Otherwise, let's see. Could also do D-Rod versus Randy Brown. Or I guess Michael Chiesa just got a win over Court McGee, but that fight was terrible. So I don't want to see D-Rod versus Bonfim. I feel like that's cruel. And I don't know. I want to see him against like Randy Brown, or really I want to see him against Gilbert Burns. I think that's the right fight. Maybe Mike Malott too. And then for Holland, you could book a fight for Holland, but he's just going to take whatever's on the table the next time something comes around. It'd be a great time to book Holland versus Buckley too. Say that. Buckley coming off a loss. So you could absolutely do that. Or you could do Holland versus Njokuani, or Holland versus Dalby, or whatever. Just, Holland will just take whatever. And people saying Holland Bonfim looked terrible against Wonderboy. I admittedly didn't see that fight, but Wonderboy is actually like a really tough technical out, even for a lot of fighters still. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to watch the Wonderboy fight, because in my mind, the idea of Bonfim versus D-Rod just doesn't excite me. I don't know why. All right, that brings us to a featherweight bout. Patricio Pitbull, Dan Ige. And I kind of knew going in, I had this feeling, Pitbull had a really horrible matchup against Yair in his UFC debut. That was a terrible fight. It was a terrible fight for Pitbull 2 or 3 years ago. It was a terrible fight for him now. Just an absolutely abysmal matchup. And Dan Ige was not that. So I had a lot more expectation that Pitbull would show up and get this win. But the unfortunate thing is, and this is still just what kind of comes out, that Patricio Pitbull has not been a thrilling fighter for years now. His time as a championship level fighter who only fights in championship level fights really put a slow, measured, cautious pace into his game, and it's not going away. So even great matchups like he had against Ige here are still fights that he's A, not going to thrill a lot of fans, and B, where he's going to give fighters a chance to come back and rally against him, because he does not want to go out there and really press the pace. And he's also 38. So fighters are just going to have more chances to rally against him than they ever would have. That said, it's featherweight. So there's a fight with, I guess Brian Ortega's fighting Aljamain Sterling, but I wouldn't mind seeing him against the loser of that fight. There's a fight with Josh Emmett out there. Emmett is a huge puncher, but he is also 40, and he doesn't push a huge pace that would necessarily stretch Pitbull's pace, or put him in there against somebody like Calvin Kattar or Giga Chikadze. Those would all be fun fights. There are fun fights out there for him. I don't think he's ever going to be a title contender in the UFC at this point, but he can show up and at least be an interesting fighter in some elite fights. I think Swanson has officially retired. So I think that may be a case of somebody's wife actually putting their foot down, because he had that whole, he won his last fight, and then he was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm not going to retire and all that. And then he came back a couple days later with a video looking thoroughly chastised, being like, okay, I'm done, guys. So I think that might be an actual case where Swanson's just not around anymore. But I would say Pitbull against like the loser of Ortega Sterling would be a lot of fun. And I know people don't want to see him against killers, but I would want to see Pitbull versus Emmett. I don't care. Yeah, I do not want to see Pitbull versus Steve Garcia. That is not a fight I want. That is absolutely the kind of pointless booking that the UFC could very well do. Really wish they'd found a way to do Pitbull Aldo, but whatever. All right. And for Ige, I mean, it's a rough loss, but you could do Ige versus Chikadze. That would be a great fight. Or, let's see, Ige versus Nate Landwehr. That would also be fun. Ige versus Landwehr, or somebody saying Ige versus Costa. That's a good idea too. Or Ige versus Brito, with Brito coming off that loss to Pat Sabatini. All right. That brings us to a lightweight bout. Michael Johnson, Daniel Zellhuber, the real underdog turn-up of the whole thing. I mean, I know that Costa, D-Rod, and was Pitbull actually an underdog too? I gotta check. Yeah, Pitbull was an underdog too. So yeah, it was a huge string of underdogs, but Johnson felt like Johnson was getting fed to Daniel Zellhuber. And I think, on the Vivi this week, I was pretty dismissive in general about picking Johnson. But at least I will say we did talk about the idea that this could be, I felt it could be a really ugly fight for Zellhuber. I was picking him anyway, but my worry with Zellhuber was that he is really bad when fighters don't come to him, when they don't bring the fight to him, when they don't get in the pocket and just try to trade and brawl with him. Zellhuber, when he's in open space, we think with all that range and all that height, he'd be great at that. But when he's in open space, he tends not to really know what to do with his hands. He's not comfortable leading. He overextends. He falls into the pocket himself, leaves himself open to get countered. And it's just a big struggle for him. And I figured, Johnson is not a fighter who brawls really with a lot of people. He likes to get in and out, really rely on his speed. It could be an ugly fight. I still picked Zellhuber. I was still dismissive of Johnson as a potential winner. But I did think this could be ugly. And credit to Johnson, he had that quote afterward where he said, the head moves, the body doesn't. And he lived on that. And he just punished Zellhuber to the body all fight, took what was given, and stayed out in front of him. And yeah, Zellhuber kind of picked it up finally in the final round and started to put things together well enough to have the kind of fight he could win. But he got old man. He got veteraned out there. Somebody asking, what does Johnson being on a 3-fight win streak mean in 2025? It is wild. He's talking about title contention. I still don't think that's reality. He's more flat-footed than he used to be. Still has the fast hands. He's still a prodigious natural talent when it comes to hand speed. Always has been one of the most naturally gifted fighters ever when it comes to pure hand speed. I don't think that he's going to beat actual contenders, but it's wild that he's getting this late run in his career. And let's see. I mean, maybe you know what? I wouldn't be against him getting a fight with Benoit Saint-Denis. Say that. You could even do Rafael Fiziev, but I think Benoit Saint-Denis would make a lot more sense. More realistically, it's probably opponents in line with let's see. Maybe Nazim Sadikov or Mauricio Hufi. But I wouldn't be against Benoit Saint-Denis. He's not getting Dariush. Dariush is still he's coming off a win and he's still ranked number 9 in that. I mean, Dariush is willing to fight anybody. So that might be in Johnson's favor if he's willing to campaign hard for that kind of fight. But Benoit Saint-Denis is probably the best fight he could shoot for, and he's more likely to get somebody like Mauricio Hufi. All right. And for Zellhuber, I mean, it's just got to be back to the drawing board, back to the mid-card crush of lightweights. Fight somebody like Mikta Bikkarol, but no, he's coming off a loss, so could fight somebody like did they already fight? You could fight Ignacio Bahamondes. Make that fight happen. Zellhuber Bahamondes seems like a pretty natural booking to make, and that'd be a lot of fun. All right, that brings us to a bantamweight bout: Vinicius Oliveira, Kyler Phillips, and I mean, Dricus du Plessis better watch out, because Vinicius Oliveira is coming for his title of best bad fighter in MMA. Oliveira's game makes not one goddamn bit of sense for the elite levels of MMA, but coming off of back-to-back wins over Ricky Simon, Said Nurmagomedov, and Kyler Phillips, it's already working at a way higher level than it should be. I mean, the man is pretty much operating on pure aggressive bully vibes. Just never take a step backward. Defense is for cowards. Scowling at somebody is really effective top-level offense. And he's huge, and he's a puncher, and he's actually really hard to take down and control on the mat, so you have to engage in his kind of fight. And Kyler Phillips, I mean, Oliveira has been knocked out in the first round. He's been knocked out in the first round, or he's been knocked out in the first round once. He's been stopped in every loss. And you can see exactly why. Like, Kyler Phillips went out there and lit him up, and everybody's going to have that chance. So it's, you see him, if he's going to fight somebody like Song Yadong or Piotr Yan or somebody like that, you have to feel the chances are high he's going to get crushed. But if he does not get crushed, I mean, I compared him a lot to Davison Figueiredo, and he's not as technically deft as Figueiredo, but it is a lot of the same kind of pressure and presence that he's giving in his fights, where it's just, this guy is going to pressure you relentlessly, and he's going to hit you really hard. And it's so difficult to deal with. Somebody's mentioning here, Godzilla Hooper, that Phillips needs to reevaluate. I think the big thing, I mean, Phillips has this thing where he keeps going on runs where it looks like he's fixing things, and then they just fall apart again. And Phillips, like, his anxiety gets to him. He doesn't sustain his cardio well, doesn't sustain his success well. And I mean, it's just going to be really difficult for him against really confident opponents regularly. But the thing that, I mean, I think that Oliveira really shows a lot about MMA is, it's really hard to have good defense in MMA. If somebody's just swinging at you wild and going crazy on you, there are so many parts of the body that are available to be hit, and so many parts of the body you can hit with, that some guy just throwing wild power, huge power kicks, overhands, hooks, takedowns, just all sorts of stuff at you, whatever they want. It's really hard to have mindful defense with small gloves. And MMA footwork is just not that great, because Phillips, it was getting trapped against the cage really easily by a guy just basically, plodding after him with wild shots. And there's a lot of fighters that's going to work with. Song Yadong is notoriously bad off the back foot and has bad back footwork as well. We have seen several fights where, like, Chris Gutierrez gets really frustrated if he can be overpowered and pushed backwards the whole time and forced to eat bigger strikes. There are other elite fights that Vinicius Oliveira can take and win. I would not be at all averse to seeing him fight Mario Batista or Ayman Zahabi or Montel Jackson. These are all really fun fights. I think, honestly, I would probably say, I feel like Ayman Zahabi makes the most sense, just because I feel like Ayman Zahabi is the least likely fighter to actually be a long-term top 15 talent. And that win he got over Jose Aldo was more about where Jose Aldo is in his career than Zahabi. But Zahabi's on a hell of a win streak. And so is Oliveira. I don't know. I think that'd be a fun fight. Otherwise, yeah, Batista or Jackson. Eddie's not here to moan and groan and be all terrible about me saying Mario Batista, so I'm saying Mario Batista as well. But I think Vinicius Oliveira versus Ayman Zahabi would be a hell of a good fight. All right. And for Kyler Phillips, yeah, this is just more readjustment, back to the drawing board. Look at fights where, he's really got to figure out what he can do to convince himself to stay in control of a fight. Because it's clear when he's pushed back, he gets uncomfortable. He's got the speed to stay away and to fight off his back foot and to be neutralizing, but he doesn't have the comfort to do that. So he's got to find ways to effectively keep himself in control of fights. And right now at elite levels, Rob Font and Vinicius Oliveira, even the lowest of elite levels, he's struggling to do that. I wouldn't at all mind seeing him in a rematch with Hani Barcelos, but probably fights with Daniel Marcos or Javid Basharat would be a really good idea for him. So maybe one of those. All right. That brings us to a middleweight bout. Brendan Allen, Marvin Vettori, and I don't know. I feel bad for Marvin Vettori. Obviously, he's gone through a huge tragedy, and it may just be that this was not the right time for him to be taking this fight. I can't also help but feel like his moniker as the most durable fighter in MMA may be starting to erode. Obviously, he didn't get knocked out here, but it was notable in a fight where neither he nor Allen are known for being huge punchers. Allen regularly stunned and buzzed Vettori in this fight, and because Vettori came out and he started out the fight in the way that, like, in a classic Vettori fashion, like he was really gonna go out there and press Allen, push the pace, be King's MMA Marvin Vettori, not ATT Marvin Vettori. But then Allen just kept buzzing his chin and hurting him, and it kept putting Vettori on the back foot. And once Vettori is on the back foot, if he's not aggressive as a low-powered volume kickboxer, his kickboxing is not the kind of thing that's going to win him a lot of fights without aggression. So, yeah, it's just, I feel bad for Vettori because it feels like things are going wrong in a real serious way for him that he's not really going to fix. And yeah, them pointing down at the mat and then just like backing up and not going for it was hilarious. Allen trying to rear naked choke him, and Marvin Vettori doesn't have a neck. You can't choke Marvin Vettori. It's literally never happened. It's never going to happen. But I just kind of feel like Marvin Vettori's he's in a rough place where he still has the ranking and reputation of being an elite fighter, but he no longer has a game to compete at an elite level, even though he's only in his early 30s. And it's going to put him in a lot of really hard fights where he's not going to compete that well. Like I say, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Kopylov. I think that's a really sensible booking coming off this card. I could also see him against somebody like Gastelum. That would also make a lot of sense. Or a rematch with Jack Hermansson, who he beat in 2020. But yeah, I know Hermansson's coming off a horrible knockout, so maybe not that. Fight with Andre Muniz would be a solid one. Or, honestly, you could do a fight with Bo Nickel. That would probably be a really sensible booking, would be Marvin Vettori versus Bo Nickel, with Nickel coming off that horrible performance against René de Ridder, and Vettori looking terrible right now. That would be You know, I don't care about Bo Nickel as a prospect, so I wouldn't mind seeing him get shown up. And if Nickel did manage to win that fight, then it would be a big momentum regaining match for him. So there you go. For that, Nikolai Veretanikov, Francisco Prado, and man, this was not a terrible fight. It was mostly because it was full of momentum swings, action going back and forth, violent, all of that. But this was also a fight that both men should have really clearly finished and won, but absolutely did not have enough composure or well-roundedness or technique or ability to stay within their own game to finish. You know, Prado kept going for aggressive grappling positions and getting swept or getting thrown off. He tried that arm bar, got slammed on his head and should have been knocked out, but Veretanikov jumped on him and tried to ground and pound him and did not have the game to really make that happen at all. And Veretanikov himself really only thrives at super long range, but doesn't often throw a lot there. So there's lots of dead space, but Prado couldn't figure out how to get in. It was just a weird fight all over. Wasn't bad, wasn't unfun, but was not good technically. It was just a sloppy fight. So I don't know. Maybe both guys saved their jobs. Prado, both guys are kind of in a position where it doesn't make any sense in the UFC anymore. Veretanikov getting this win, he'll almost certainly get another fight. Prado being fun, he might as well, but it is one of these things where both these guys have lost and fought performed underwhelmingly in the octagon often enough that you kind of have to wonder what we're all getting by watching them do it all again over and over. So just kind of a nothing fight. Prado's now 1-4 in the UFC. Veretanikov now 1-2. And yeah, I don't even have a fight to make off of that. I don't know. Do Veretanikov versus Reese McKee. That'd be fine. All right. That brings us to a middleweight bout and the very rarest of commodities on the planet Earth, an actual middleweight prospect. Ateba Gautier against Robert Valentin. And Valentin was there to lose. There's no question about that. But Ateba Gautier keeps impressing the hell out of me in fights he's supposed to win. The biggest and the best thing I'm seeing out of him is not only does he chamber his shots well, not only does he get great transfer of motion into his punches in the way that somebody like Mansour Abdul Malik does, or who's the other super athletic welterweight prospect that's sliding off of my brain right now, or the way that Jacob Smith does. Yeah. The way that Jacob Smith does. They all get really great transfer motion. They all chamber their shots well. You can see that they've got, their body weight transfer moving well. They've got their hands set up to land well. They're not throwing arm punches and stuff like that. So not only does he do that, which those guys do too, and they're great athletes and great prospects, but he does something that neither of them do, which is that he does not fight himself out of his own target range. Gautier goes out there, he puts a 1-2 on somebody, he crashes the pocket on somebody and lands a hard uppercut or a body shot, and he pushes off. He takes a step back. He goes right back to the edge of his punching range and resets at a point where he is still dangerous and his opponent is not. And he does it. He did it repeatedly against, oh God, who was it in his debut? Against Jose Medina. And he did it repeatedly against Robert Valentin. He does it really, really well. And as huge as he is, and as powerful as he is, and as athletic, and as well as he transfers his weight, as well as he measures his shots, and as young as he is, at just 23 years old, like, even if his game never gets way bigger than that, he is going to be a dangerous, dangerous fighter. And yeah, he might, it might be the first guy that can really take him down, is going to tie him in a pretzel and show that there's big parts of his game missing. I wouldn't doubt it. I don't doubt that he's going to have a hard prospect loss or two coming up. But I also don't doubt that he will be an elite ranked fighter at some point. And it's hard not to think that over the next 10 years, he's not going to find his way to fight for a title at least once with that kind of potential. As long as somebody can just keep him training, keep him focused, keep him fundamentally just getting fights and developing the way a normal fighter should, there's so much potential there. And it's awesome to see him getting the right fights right now and using and showing the right skills in those fights. Because Valentin's an aggressive submission guy. I was ready to see Gauthier drop him, fall into his guard, and potentially get subbed, and he didn't. Before that on the card, Islam Dulatov beat the brakes off Adam Fugit. Solid showing for Dulatov. His game is still sketchy. If we're talking about fighters fighting themselves out of their prime range, he does it all the time. He crashes his range. He let Fugit get him with some really good low kicks and do some stuff that, he showed some gaps, but also Dulatov is blazingly fast, super confident, and he throws straight, and he's huge. He's going to be a problem in that division, and this was a solid show-up. This is what he should have been doing to Fugit. I think it's kind of amazing that this hasn't happened more times to Fugit in his MMA career. He definitely gets hurt too much to be fighting at the level he's at, but he's crafted a well-rounded game. He's big. He's created space for himself in the UFC. And Dulatov went out there, though, and did exactly what he should have. So, great win for him. Earlier in the night, before that, Jimmy Crute beating Marcin Prachnio. And really a win that told us absolutely nothing. Prachnio fights in very small bursts and is very jittery and can be taken off his game at any time. Crute is famous for dumping all his energy on people and getting blown out if he doesn't get a finish. He got a finish. We still have no idea if there's a fight Jimmy Crute can win in round 2 right now. I'm sure for him it felt great to get back into the winning column again for the first time since 2020. But yeah, we have no idea if this career rebuild he's been going through is actually worth anything yet. And I mean, his fight with Rodolfo Bellato that he fought to a majority draw earlier this year suggests that he's still the same guy. So I don't know. Ryan Spahn beat Łukasz Brzeski, and there was, Brzeski is just not a real heavyweight. He doesn't have the durability for heavyweight. And Spahn, I still don't know that Spahn has the confidence for heavyweight, but this was a fight. If he was going to build the confidence, this is a fight to do it. This was a confidence building fight for Spahn. They fed him somebody he was going to beat. He beat him. It's fine. I don't know. And we're already, I'm getting way in on time, so I'm not going to try to rack up, pick out next fights and all that. Bruno Ferreira beat Jackson McVeigh, and Jackson McVeigh just, I feel bad for Jackson McVeigh. I talked about this on the Vivi. He went from a fight he was going to win, maybe, against Ewert, to a fight he might win, possibly, against Dumas, to a fight he was just going to lose against Bruno Ferreira. Ferreira has his gaps in his game, but he is powerful and experienced enough to know how to handle himself against somebody who only wants to clinch him. He was able to toss McVeigh around in the clinch, walk him into a submission, easy win, tells us nothing, made no sense as a booking, whatever, it's over and done. And then finally, I didn't actually get to see this whole fight. I was out watching Superman, which I enjoyed. It was fine, whatever. And but I did see the highlights. Love to see Carly Judas putting it on Nicole Cagliari. I love her game. I love what Judas is doing out there. Really a strong technical base. Love the highlight finish. I'm going to have to go back and watch that later. On that note, though, thanks everyone for tuning in. Subscribe. There's a link down below. Help keep the shows going. And you can find me on Twitter at @Zane Simon. You can find me on Blue Sky at Zane Simon. You can find me on Substack at Zane Simon. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Adios.